You're on.
I am ready to have some hot takes with this nerd tonight.
And Doug, you are just on fire. How's everybody doing this fine and lovely evening? It's Monday and it's time for a live chat. And as if you couldn't guess from either of those jokes, it's about fire.
Yeah. Pretty cool subject. I mean, usually I try to I'll go on D&D Beyond and search terms, and it's like I didn't even bother because it would probably just have like 8 bazillion things
between fire spells, fire abilities, fire monsters.
Yeah.
It is literally off the charts. It is a topic that is just too hot. Don't worry, guys. They're going to keep on coming throughout the evening. But when I looked at, I didn't do any research, but I thought about the topic. I said,
yeah, sure, me too.
And have some kind of grounding point. I look at, moments in either history or TV shows, movies, what have you, and you look at the celebratory nature that's used so often about when you first get fire. Fire is so many things to so many people. It's the ability to produce light. It's the ability to produce heat. It's the ability to have things cooked so that you can actually eat, proper food without getting sick. If you advance technology and you want to actually forge something, you require fire to, actually heat up said metal. So it's a part of so many things, and yet it's so often overlooked as this, danger and force of.
Yeah, really, it's so deeply rooted. What I kept coming back to when I was also thinking about it is like, it's just deeply rooted in like the human experience. If you think about it, it was like a turning point for humans.
Mm-hmm.
Discovering like, oh, I can control fire, I can make it, and that's when you could do all those things you just said, which lead to just ingenuity and innovation and things like that.
What is the Tom Hanks movie Castaway?
Yeah, right.
I have made fire.
Yeah, I mean that's like that. It's survival. So many things. Yeah, power. It's destructive, but it also can create things. To your point,
but it's a way to ward off darkness. The sense of light is so much again overlooked, and having fire to protect yourself. I have made light, therefore things that are natural predators, they can't make fire. They see it, they tend to stay away. They want to slink and hunt. You've got fire, so never mind. I'm gonna leave you alone.
Right. And and for those kind of things, I feel like in terms of D&D, like we're talking about, it's interesting because it's been a long time since I've played like a long campaign, right, with the same characters and like slowly progressed. So moments like that often get glossed over when like the kind of games I play, one shots, or just like we're only going to play 8 episodes because like who wants to spend any of that time like trying to worried about like we need to get firewood in the dark woods and stuff like that, but at the same time those things are fun. Like I've been mentioning to you guys that I've been rewatching Game of Thrones, and that's it has magic and everything like that, but it's still very grounded in like a human reality and things. And yeah, it really puts it in perspective. It's like when the night is dark, it is full of terrors, even if it's just enemy knights hiding in the woods or monsters or anything else. So
or if you want to escalate that to the other direction, when you look at, and I'm sorry it's been long enough, but spoilers,
yeah.
Near the end of Game of Thrones, when Daenerys is unleashing the dragons and Dracarys, like things are literally reduced to ash. The sheer magnitude of power that these dragons are unleashing, armies are set to nothing by just the few dragons that she's got access to.
So, yeah, and it's kind of, I can see how, the way 5e D&D has evolved and developed, where it can be sort of underwhelming to face those things, only in the sense of like, unless you've really built up, that sense of power of like seeing a dragon, destroy a city and stuff. you know, when you're low level and you have no chance of facing it. But it also puts into perspective, even fire, like that simple ubiquitous damage type, and there's so much resistances. It's still dangerous and scary to think, like, you know, it's scary, but also because of that makes it more exciting to fight those kind of things, where it's like, to imagine like, man, I just like put up my shield and block this dragon's fire breath and, you know, soldiered on. It's pretty exciting. You know, like that's pretty
Look,
heroic stuff.
when you look at, you brought it out, the fire damage type, I believe beyond, like, bludgeoning, piercing,
Yeah.
touching, fire is the most common thing that's out there.
Yeah.
It might quarrel with poison, but I think fire is the highest. And it can come from fire-based creatures. It can come from spells. It is the easiest thing that's out there. There's so many things that offer resistance, but yet it is still one of those things that, I walked outside this afternoon, just before dinner, and it was so god awful hot that, I'm like, am I taking fire damage just to be outside? Yeah. Am I going to be able to do a walk today? Like, it's, it's a lot. And to, kind of take just a hot day and compare that to, what a Dragonborn's breath weapon would actually do. The fact that can just kill a couple of people, like, all right, how do you only resist fire if you can conjure that much flame from your gullet?
Right. Totally just lost my train of thought. That stinks.
I look sure. I look at fire, and if you kind of hold true to any of the different elemental signs or zodiac and that kind of stuff, fire is generally an energy symbol. And I was born in August. I'm definitely a fire sign, and back in my prime, it was really hard for me to sit still. As a kid, I was always jumpy. In college, in between classes, I didn't just sit and chill. Even now at the gaming table, if I'm DMing, I have better energy, better storytelling if I just push the chair aside and I stand up over the table and kind of direct what's going on. And I'm still doing that now. I mean, I gamed Saturday night, and I was like, all right, this is a chill moment. I'll sit down, and we'd have a conversation and blah 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 blah. Like, all right, battle starts. Chair, and I'm moving and I'm doing all of this fun stuff.
Oh, I remember. As I say, fire, sort of along the same lines of it being like a damage type, which is a mechanical thing. It's like, I find it interesting because, like I mentioned all the time, of like, just because of the nature of my job and the things we do, I'm like always really reading the rules. Like, what does it say? What does it mean? Just so I know, like, our kind of, like the stuff we make is on the level. But it's also interesting to me, and again, like, I'm just probably gonna reference Game of Thrones a lot tonight, but like having fire resistance, to your point, or not, you can still, like, there's so many places to use that for, like, for like an entry point for immersion, right? Like, think about like Sandor. He was just afraid of flame because it was part of his backstory, and there was no mechanical thing like in a D&D sense, or maybe there was. But if just role playing that, it's like that's kind of a cool thing, and it can lead to all kinds of interesting stories, just like it did for him.
If given the choice, that was something that he would do. And like, I highly encourage characters, players, to make those kinds of choices. Give your character some kind of quirk, some kind of little flaw. It doesn't necessarily have to be mechanical, but it's there. My first D&D character for 5th edition, I've talked about on the channel Relion many times. When I kind of drafted the character through the personality traits and flaws, he had can't tell a lie, and he wasn't super charismatic. So, like, I had forgotten about it, and we get several sessions in and something's going on, and I'm like, nope, can't, not deceiving. I'm just going to have to stop talking. And like, things were going on, and I realized this, and I'm like, I'm going to push somebody else into the conversation seat here. And like, that ruined everything, because like, I realized I got to stick to what I created for the character. And oh well, no big deal. The campaign moved on, the plots got uncovered. But like, if you have these kind of moments, a fear of fire is pretty harsh, and that might mean, okay, well, you might flee from combat every now and again, but if you don't have something to overcome, what kind of advancement are you making beyond mechanical power?
Right. Right, that can lead to, yeah, like to your point, yeah, like down the road, it's like, well, maybe you do overcome it, and there's no mechanical advantage or disadvantage like there's been the whole time. But from a story standpoint, with your friends and everything, it would be pretty awesome, I think, to be like, no, I'm going to stay and defend my friends or this person or whatever.
I mean, you could take it further and be like, well, I'm going to consider fire of anything beyond like a torch, an actual fear effect. If there's fire that's threatening me, I'm going to make a wisdom saving throw, and I'm going to treat this, as a source of my fear, just like, the people who, oh my God, there's a spider, and they freak out.
Yeah, right.
And fall back. It's a thing. It happens. Those are moments that you can kind of rise above. And if you manage to pass your saving throw enough times and keep going, like, good things could possibly happen.
Yeah.
You can always work with your GM to figure things out. And, maybe you can have, the kind of gimme at just the right moment. And your DM is like, okay, you've conquered this. And, you feel that you have moved on beyond those things.
Yeah. And by the flip side too, like, you can have a lot of interesting things considering you have fire resistance, which a lot of characters can get easily, not the least of which is just by being a tiefling. It's like, you're just resistance of fire. So, again, thinking of like, and a lot of this, I often think of it in context of like lower level stuff when the people you're interacting with probably aren't super magical and powerful either. So, just doing something like sticking your hand in a fire to prove that you're tough or scary or whatever. And, you might take damage because you're only resistant and it's half. But that's just how tough it's like you kind of mechanically proving it. It's like, sure, it's not going to hurt you as much, but you're still resistant, and it could intimidate, some commoners or some bullies or bandits on the road or whatever.
Absolutely. I like
flame. Immolate yourself, or
I like Brian's comment. You could be so scared of fire, you vow to destroy the plane of fire.
Well, all you gotta do is get yourself some brown mold, open a portal, and toss it in. That
would be one powerful brown mold.
It would just eat. I mean, that's just like one of those peasant railgun things.
Yeah.
Just, like. Theoretically, it would just keep consuming the entire.
What would happen if you were in the plane of fire and you opened a portal to the plane of water?
Get the plane of steam, I guess. Quasi element. That's the quasi elemental planes.
So quick break. I'm not going to reveal anything now. We'll let a handful more people, come in. But it's the second week of the month. Last week I kind of showed off and announced the giveaway winner, and I kind of teased that August giveaway is going to be pretty darn huge, and we've talked about how to get on that with the newsletter and Patreon. So I'm not going to show everything off all at once because it's just too much stuff. So I have a list here that I will read, and the light is so bright there's no way you could possibly have read so I'll read everything off.
Enhance.
I'll show off the stack of books that are a part of what's going on here. So it's gonna be nice. The box is really heavy. I'm really afraid to find out what the shipping cost is going to be on sending that to whoever it happens to go. But, if you have any questions, any thoughts that you want to share about fire, as always, go ahead and throw those up in the chat and put, Nerdarchy or question or whatever have you in front of it. And we'll be sure to, kind of talk about it, tease about it, whatever. You had mentioned resistance to fire, and there are, a handful of races that wind up, kind of getting into it. A couple of Dragonborn, the Tiefling. I was really surprised that the Genasi don't actually have any kind of resistance to their
I think Vent did. Oh, that was probably because it's a barbarian thing. His
Barbarian thing.
it was the
Oh.
Storm Herald.
Yeah, well, you were a fire genasi, so you should have had fire, but no.
Oh, you mean the other Genasi don't have resistances to things?
Yeah,
Oh, really?
yeah. I was doing
Doesn't the water have like acid resistance or something like that?
nope.
No,
I
that's
was
weird. Maybe I'm thinking of the earlier edition.
I was doing some research for an article and
Uh-huh.
at racial resistances, and there's not quite as many, and there's not a whole lot of things that you can do to just get a general one. But I'm like, that's kind of weird, but it is what it is. So variant for the win, everything but psychic.
You gotta be a Kalashtar for that, right? Don't they have psychic resistance?
I believe so.
Let's see. Now I'm just thinking of the other quasi-elemental planes. I know earth and water would be mud. What is fire and air?
Ash.
Oh yeah. Yep. And then what's the other one would be earth and air? Dust, I think.
I believe dust.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Anyway, sorry, just tangent.
No.
Made me think of one of my. I always like methods too. I always like those things. Or all those.
Methods can be a lot of fun to kind of work and play with.
Nicholas Schubert, it is canon in third edition, and I think I don't know about fourth edition cosmology. I don't remember, but the quasi-elemental planes are 100% from third edition.
Well, I mean, you've got the regular planes, the demi planes, the quasi planes. It's crazy.
Yeah.
so in my brain, there's basically a plane of existence for everything.
Mm-hmm. Oh yeah.
If you can have planes of alignments and planes of elements, demi elements, quasi elements, then why can't I have a elemental plane of swords? Why can't I have an elemental plane of hammers?
There's an elemental plane of sugar in my universe. Yeah, I'm there, right there with you.
I wasn't there just like an elemental plane of flavor? Like, wasn't that a thing?
I don't know.
I thought there was something.
There was a goddess of umami.
Yeah,
just like the fifth flavor.
And I know the secret that she whispered to Fitzroy was add bacon. And I don't doubt that. But getting back to fire, I kind of loosely touched on it with the elemental stuff. Like you've got the elemental plane of fire and all the elementals that go with it.
Mm-hmm.
You've got basically all of the lower planes, the hells. That is basically just as fiery and evil. Actually, as much fiery and more evil. To be able to play with. So like those are two planes that you just don't want to go to without fire resistance, because they're just gonna kill you.
Oh yeah, for sure. And they have like the extreme heat things going on, which is I think causes fire damage, or it's probably more harsh than that. It's probably but fire is often associated with those evil things, but it's also like the light domain heavily deals with fire, and I always figured that's sort of actually my experience with the light domain is playing like a beach bum cleric who worshipped the sun and stuff. So that's my kind of perspective on it.
So,
but it is like a protective thing, and like Pelor, the sun god and stuff. Like the sun is, fire, and it's often considered like that's, as far as fire bringing light in the day, the fire in the sky is what keeps the night at bay. Makes crops grow.
So
I mean, it is fire.
I look at fire and the sun, can be one and the same, or they can be separate. Not elements, but separate things.
Yeah.
I mean, I've always had a passion for fire. Whether it be, setting.
That's apropos.
I mean, it is
like
for a lot
I'm indifferent about water. I could, whatever.
I mean, I enjoy going swimming, but I'm not a big fan of the ocean. I don't in salt water. But when it comes to like sitting around a campfire and just watching the flames, flicker and burn, watching the the embers kind of, crisp and make things.
Does the Lord of Light reveal things to you?
I don't think the Lord of Light has ever revealed anything to me in the fires, in any way, shape, or form. But I've always dug it, and
Mhm.
it's something that, as a kid sitting at scout camp, or camping with my family, sitting in a camp chair by the fire and just like in the silence, letting the birds and the crickets chirp away, and you're just listening to the pop, the crackle and pop. Yeah, it's soothing.
You know, and you bring up a point. It makes me think of something. That actually you and I end up talking about a lot of but the concept of like relatability, right? And like all of the elements, but we're talking about fire, so we'll use those examples. Kind of have that thing again because they are like elemental like parts of things that we know, and those kind of examples: fireworks, campfires, lighting up the night with candles and things and setting a mood. And I find like my favorite parts of playing D&D come when like everybody sort of is like in that moment, right? And like so like fire is one of those descriptive things, to your point, that can sort of like facilitate role playing. Like, and we get a lot of questions and I see them all the time, like how do you get players to role play more? And it's like, well, set the mood where they would feel like they would talk, right? Like around a campfire. There's nothing going on, maybe they have a watch or whatever, but just describing it and maybe give them some prompt or something. But yeah, it can be very effective, but at the same time very scary too. I mean, again, if you break everything down into just like numbers and figures, it's like sure, you can calculate the odds of like, well, I got evasion, I can dodge dragon's fire, and blah 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 blah, but it's still scary. I mean, just to think of like a roars and the shaking and just watching like a building explode next to you because it's just breathing fire all around or whatever, or seeing people incinerated all around you.
Yeah, I mean that's a great aspect, and as powerful and destructive as it is, we did mention all of the great elements,
Mhm.
great aspects thereof. And I had mentioned, Ted likes fire, so of course one of my earlier characters, in playing D&D, I wound up playing a cleric who worshipped fire, and that was his deal.
Sure.
I still remember the name. I still remember the fact that I was teased horribly for the name. I don't know whether he was a fire genasi, but like he was something that like fire was a part of the race. I think it was like back in second edition.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I could have. There's probably hundreds of things back then.
But his name was Izalar Sindarn.
Okay, cool. Why they make fun of that?
I like intricate names, and therefore the gaming group hates me for it. So they just wanted to call him Easy C.
Oh, okay.
That is what I had to deal with many times. But when he used his healing magic, it was basically, I always treated it like I was cauterizing the wounds.
Sure.
I healed you with heat, so it was painful for you to recover. And like when
it's like icy hat.
Turned up a couple of notches.
Yeah.
But if somebody else used magic to heal me and there wasn't the heat with it, like he felt like where's the heat? Where's the thing? And so like it was a role-playing tool.
Sure.
that I used to build up that character.
Oh yeah, I certainly leaned heavily into the fiery nature of Vent too, and I love that's one of my favorite characters ever. I mean, he grew up on the elemental plane of fire. He was very tempestuous and rash.
Yeah. Oh,
man, I can't wait to get back to that. Now I'm thinking about that.
Well, we got to finish up your game, and then we got Steven's game before, Robin.
Oh, I know we'll have many more fun times ahead, but yeah, I just like those guys. Brian Smith mentions how the torch may be the most iconic D&D item. Certainly back in the day when the dungeons were, the most prominent part of the game. I haven't thought about using a torch or even cared if I had one in my inventory, and I can't even tell you how long. I do like that kind of gaming. I just haven't played games like that. Like I said, those are more fun when you just have like a slow, like you're going to play for a while, and have like long sessions and things like that. That style of play, which I would love to do that. It just hasn't been in the cards for me for a long time. Of just like a long-term campaign.
That style of game can be fun as long as you are aware going into it.
Right.
That's what you're looking for, and you have to have the right group is into that. And I haven't been a part of that kind of group. I'm not certain that I'd be lining up to do just, a yield basic dungeon call. But you going into act of, okay, you have whatever you brought into this and whatever you find, and who knows what kind of elements are going to be within luck. Like that's a survivalist game. That can be an awful lot of fun. So I mean, I'm not going to shoot it down.
Right. Yeah. Right. Yeah. I totally get it. One quick thing I learned from I think it was Lindy Beige. You ever watch his channel?
I know
it's not a gaming thing. It's just
right.
But so when you always see movies and stuff and people holding the torch in front of you, that's not, that would actually ruin your vision.
Yeah, worse. You got to hold it behind. Yep.
Yeah, so that the light shines past.
That's why that's why you need to hire a torchbearer.
Yeah,
you
exactly. But yeah, to that point, I just think those sort of games work better, like I said, if you're going to play for a long time, because it's like if you're only going to play like once a month for like a couple months, you're probably only going to, you're not going to do very much. But that style of game could be fun. But and also like again, those low level slow burn things give you more opportunities to like, have the. Just make it more realistic if you're into that sort of game. Like I said, I got Game of Thrones so heavily on my mind, so it's just like
it gives you that chance to be afraid of the dark. It gives you to have to inventory management. A torch burns for so long. How many hours are you going to be down there? How many torches do you have? Or even on the road to just be wary of everything.
Just going into a tavern, it's like, I don't know. I guess D&D, like the fantasy of it is more prominent these days. So it's like, you think like, oh, like these are probably nice roadside taverns with tile floors. It's like, when in reality, it's probably dirt, and like everybody's filthy and dirty, and it's like.
it is a brief respite that is better than lying on the ground.
Yeah, right. It's like the windows just, it's like they kind of keep out the cold wind just because there's like
so Ryan mentions the wildfire druid. Have you had a chance to play with anyone using a wildfire?
I have, and I know V does and stuff, but yeah, it's I understand like the concept, but I haven't seen it like played, so I'm curious for what you think about it.
So I know the big change to go from the UA to the official class was the removal of Fireball, and I think people were very, very miffed about that. I think they were maybe hot under the collar.
It seemed like too much uncontrolled destruction, though. That's what I think the reasoning there would be.
So yeah, I mean, a fireball covers a lot of territory, and if you're out in the wilds and it's a druid, you're not an evocator. You've got no way to stop different targets from burning. So I definitely understand the removal of it, but the cleansing aspect, the fire, to allow new growth. Stay with it, and if you're ever in my game and you want to play a wildfire druid and you want fireball, I'm okay with it.
Yeah. Fire is super appealing, like kind of trope character theme, just for, all of time. Flaming swords, fire wizards, fire sorcerers. People all love that. And there's tons of cool, like, ways you can make characters like that in 5e D&D, whether you want to be like a warrior and just like, have what's that? Well, isn't there like Searing Smite basically?
Yep.
Ignites your sword. You could probably focus on that, or just like, if you want to be a fire mage or any kind of fire themed character, there's countless ways. Like I said, Bent was a barbarian who I think I would multi-class into that fire genie thing a little bit, dip a toe in just for like story fun.
When you look at classes, you can get fire through, almost all of them. So it's kind of crazy.
Yeah, I guess the bard's really the only one doesn't have like a strong access to. I mean, there's like magical secrets and some spells, but
Right.
like
But that's different, using magical secrets versus an actual dedicated subclass.
Yeah, right.
Eldritch Knight is going to allow you to get fire. I don't think there's anything that's rogue and fire.
Yeah, just arcane trickster
might be a bit, touchy. But
there's like flame arrow and stuff. But it's just like a handful of things.
Right. Yeah. I mean, getting aspect to I can do some fire damage versus
that's my jam.
Yeah.
I got flames on my robes, red hair.
So good times, bad times. They found their slippers. I'm happy for you. I'm not.
Man, that's a great point too. About how fire can be a big danger to, maybe it's not to the PCs. Again, this depends on your type of group, because I'm sure there's plenty of players out there who wouldn't give a crap if a town was on fire. They'd be like, oh, sweet, let's just wait until it burns down and go root through the ashes for gold.
It's like, there's gold. It's slagged.
Actually, we have a take on that in Out of the Box now I think about it. It's like, well, it's not just the town on fire. It's like you're just in town and like a sinkhole opens up and a fire giant howdah comes out with an attack squad of hobgoblins shooting flaming arrows. So that's something to deal with right in the middle of it. I love those. That's what I love about those Out of the Box things. It's just like anytime, it's like doesn't have to have a big and that kind of is like a verisimilitude too, right? Because it's like you might be on the big damn quest to do whatever. But it's like, doesn't mean there's not just maybe just like one tribe of hobgoblins made an ally with a fire giant. And like, this city's probably just, we learned about this village and they're unprotected and you just happen to be there.
You mentioned Out of the Box, and it's already past 8:30. So I'm going to use this as a segue into, the August giveaway pile, because in said giveaway is going to be a copy of Out of the Box.
Oh, wow. That's awesome.
But it's not just, this. We're giving away the whole Out of the Box experience. You've got the book, the maps, the Arknight minis. That stuff's over there, but it's all in the box.
Whoa, that's awesome.
A full Out of the Box pack. There's 2 pieces of artwork, 8 gaming books, which I'll show you what all 8 are. A pack of the standee minis, the 2-dimensional minis that go along with the Ultimate Bestiary, Revenge of the Horde, from our friends over at Nord Games.
Oh, man, it's so good.
There's 11 minis, 2 fold-out maps, and 11 pieces of what I'm referring to at the moment as extra stuff. It's assortment of like dice and cards and knick-knacky type things. But yeah, I'll show all of that off, kind of as we go. But we've got a copy of the No Prep Game Master, copy of The North Road by our friends over at Quest.
Oh, cool.
As I mentioned, Out of the Box, an amazing book that, some people that you might happen to know. Aforementioned Ultimate Bestiary.
Man, Nord stuff's so good.
We've got Player's Handbook for Opalon Rising, and 3 official D&D books. We have got Candlekeep Mysteries, The Regular Guide to Richton's Guide to Ravenloft, and Tasha's Cauldron of Everything. All of that, and as I said, more to come. This alone, 8 books, that's a lot of weight, and as you would imagine, a big hefty price tag. So yeah.
And that's to celebrate sort of your and Dave's birthdays, which are both in August as well.
Yes. Dave and I both celebrate our birthday in the first half of August, mere 10 days apart. A lot of fun. We've actually, celebrated Dave's birthday a couple of times at Gen Con.
Yeah.
But, funness.
That is quite a haul.
That is quite a haul. There is a lot of stuff on the giveaway shelf. And if that's not enough, I am actually currently in process of getting ready to, receive my Bones 5 shipment. And I spent quite a lot there. And I realized that I desperately need to, clear house. So I will be contacting, when I get a response from said winner, it will also be, hey, I've got this kind of stuff just sitting out. Any interest in adding to? And I will gladly add that in. It would all be unpainted minis, so I will not send you anything you don't want. But if you want any, I'll be glad to share and make go away, because I've got too many and I don't have enough time to paint at the moment. So my lack of space is somebody else's game. But that's what I've got on my giveaway agenda for the moment. So
yeah, so go check out Patreon or sign up for the newsletter, and you can get
or both. That'll get you, the double the chances.
You should totally do both those things for sure. What was I going to say? Let's see. Did you have any fiery creatures? I saw some pictures from your game the other night, and it looked like a heck of a situation there with a large assortment of crazy big monsters. What was going on there?
All right, so we'll get into that. There wasn't a whole lot going on fire related, but as we're definitely interested, as we're definitely getting close to the end of this campaign, they were seeking out someone who had access to a lot of mind magic. So I've got this character that I refer to as the Psychomancer, and they are the one that they're technically mortal, but they cross over into this threshold that they are the beacon, the pinnacle of defense between this realm and those beyond, to guard against aberrations, outsiders, the things that would come beyond, if you will. And I
didn't know there was that element to your campaign. I like that kind of stuff.
Well,
just like the weird.
The campaign, this particular, story arc starts with meteors falling from space and destroying, a large portion of the planet. So it's all of those meteors had aberrations living inside.
Oh, cool.
Some that they've befriended and some that, they've had to fight, and some that have been a combination of both. So it's definitely been an interesting take. So they've gotten to the Psychomancer's tower, and they had, the thing basically had a spectral, not guard dog, but like a spectral greeter, an admin. And he's like, well, the Psychomancer is kind of occupied. And they kind of pushed. It's like, well, he's currently under assault. Do you want to do anything about it? So like they all, they were prompted, go ahead and, think about moving upwards. And that's where last session ended. So Saturday night, they arrived to this, bizarrely structured building. And I had them roll a D4 to determine randomly where they would start in this giant, battle map. And the Psychomancer's in the middle, and he's defending himself against what looks like 8 different large beasts.
Okay.
Literally like a shark flying through the air and what have you. And everybody, because when the players literally showed up at my house, the map was set up. So we're sitting there talking for half hour, 40 minutes, and
they could see the monsters
and they could see everything. And so they're sitting there kind of twiddling their thumbs and tapping the table, okay, what's going on here? It was just this moment of tension. So it was all right, I guess we're ready to do this. Let's get into it and let's have some fun. So as soon as the players began interacting with the map, they realized that what the players and the characters saw upon the map wasn't what was actually there. So I hit them with basically a puzzle right to start, that they had to figure out what the beacons were and fix them before the battle could actually start.
Wow, that's something you really could only pull off in person with miniatures and stuff. You got to be loving that, because it'd been so long. I know you really like the scatter.
What was it, 14 sessions I believe I ran in a complete completely digital, synopsis.
Yeah, that's awesome. So did they have fun figuring out the puzzle and stuff?
So I mean, it wasn't hard. I mean, I
Yeah.
make it. I didn't make it.
Sometimes puzzles and things are just more about the moments that happen while they're figuring them out.
Well,
You know what I mean?
the hardship is they were involved in a puzzle where they couldn't affect the monsters, but the monsters could affect them. So it was very challenging from that aspect. And of course, there were a couple characters who are like, so I'm using my abilities, wasting my spell slots and what have you. And other characters were like, well, I have things that happen on the first round of combat that are basically going to be negated because of this. And I'm like, well, sometimes that stuff happens.
What do you mean?
Well, like Dave was a scout, so like he got the skirmisher ambush or whatever. So like he attacked the first turn, everybody else gets advantage on him, but because that first round of combat, like they couldn't hurt the thing that he attacked.
Oh.
So like, okay, that was.
No, that's what the in answer to literally every question, like how do I deal with the player with X? Throw different kinds of challenges in there. It's like if that's the thing they rely on all the time, getting that ambush, then now they have to deal with it without that one time, or whether it could be anything, whether you have like immunity to fire, it gets taken away. You have a high AC, they target your saves. I mean, not in a vindictive way, but it's like, no, but throwing that stuff in here and there is what.
And, that was an aspect of what I had.
Oh, really? Is that actually like, was that like.
Well, I mean, I have a character who's got, a ridiculous high armor class in this particular game. I mean, I hit a 31 and, like, yeah, shield, never mind. It didn't hit.
In the game with that same campaign.
In this game, same game. Yeah.
Oh, okay.
There is some ridiculousness because I'm gaming with, veterans, people who are used to, what this rule set is, and they want to try out this build. And
sure,
the more experience, I'm like, everybody's got a flaw. Okay, you have a class.
Or maybe I don't know if this is just like if this is just like a fatalistic view of my characters or not. Not that I don't care about them, but whenever I do those kind of thematic things, it's cool when they work, but it's also memorable that the time when it doesn't work. It's like, oh man, that was pretty crazy. I couldn't believe it hit me.
And despite the challenge that I put out there, like I'm not the DM who doesn't care about the characters. In the end, I want them to succeed. I'm on their side, but it's a meaningless victory is just that. I want you to feel that, or I want the character they've overcome a challenge.
Yeah.
That
is a challenging part of being a GM. I would say I probably fall more on the wussy GM side, where it's like
there's no problem with that. If that's your style. Like I don't ever feel like your games are underwhelming. I mean, you tell an amazing story and you offer up far more lore and substance to the games that you run, and I love that. So I don't feel like there's anything lacking from
right. That's what I was gonna say. Yeah, that's what's so neat about all these games. And but I was gonna say, like, to your point, in both those cases, and I'd say all the games where I have had the most fun, whether I'm a player or the GM, it's like I just kind of had an understanding, like, yeah, everybody wants to do their cool thing and they want to be challenged mechanically, and we know we're going to get beat up and there's going to be fights, and we're not always going to win every role, but it's just a fun time and everybody's sort of on the same page, no matter what kind of campaign you're playing, whether it's a dungeon crawl or a psychedelic trip through space, or like like a puzzling sort of thing with a bunch of veterans.
Well,
in all those cases, they trust you too. It's like, look, he's not designing this challenge like, oh, hopefully one of them will die because they can't do it. It's like, no, I just want it to be like a different kind of challenge.
Well, so the thing about this hobby is there's so many ways to approach sitting behind that screen.
Right.
And if you say, well, I want it to be about combat and deadly combat, you can do that.
Yeah.
You wants to say, I want this to be focused on role playing and have this other stuff, you can do that. You can approach it from every one of the three pillars and a spectrum within each of those pillars.
Mm-hmm.
When I sit down to game, whether I'm the DM or whether I'm the player, there's always some kind of takeaway. There's always something that I'm like, man, I'm happy with X.
Yeah.
Oh yeah. When I put that combat together, I didn't stat a blessed thing. I said, well, this is the range of what I'm looking at. And I had numbers in my head. And it didn't change round to round, but I'm like, I came up with a handful of interesting powers. These guys were going to be bruisers, melee attackers.
Mm-hmm.
We're going to have this kind of ability. These two are going to be focused on saving throws. And I picked things that represented the minis that were there. And it was a mixture of, Pathfinder minis, Starfinder minis, D&D minis, and Magic minis. And I'm like, all right, let's get in here and do this. And I was quite happy with how things all played out. We ran like a 3-hour session.
Yeah.
It was great. But
and to sort of bring it back to, relate that to the topic, of fire. That's a great example. Like we started talking about at the beginning of just like, look, maybe you have a game where like fire is like a big deal, right? Like having a torch, having a campfire. It's like, there's scary things out there. Or you have one where like even, some local guy that like kind of knows some magic trick and throw around fire bolts and stuff like that. And there's like, or it's Eberron where there's like, there's little elemental, street lamps and stuff like that. It's still a powerful force. I mean, they wouldn't harness it if it wasn't. But there's just such a broad spectrum of stuff like that.
And I will jump off the rails, for just a moment. My son is on a camping trip, so you mentioned campfire, and that's what brought this in. His scout troop is kind of doing its thing, and I was approached of like, hey, half the boys or half the kids, because they're not all boys, that are on this trip actually are interested in D&D. Would you be interested in, coming to the camp one evening and actually running a session?
Oh, wow. That'd be fun. If I was a kid, that would be awesome if you just showed up out of the blue to play D&D.
Part of my day today was prepping, a handful of characters, pulling out my minis, pulling out my battle maps, figuring out exactly what I was going to do. So I've got, 12 character sheets completely prepped, minis, across a variety of genders or both genders, picked out for them to play with, the handful of NPCs, and all of my monstery goodness already, picked out. It's pretty much going to be like an intro, some choices. There'll be some combat, and then total resolution.
When are you doing that?
It's going to be Wednesday night.
Oh, okay.
Shortly after, Dave leaves leaves here and we're done filming, I'll be off on the road to go see what my evening is going to look like. Imagine, I know there's some kids who have played. Obviously, my son has been playing for years, but there's some kids that are interested but have probably never played before. So it's going to be interesting to see how it goes. So I wanted to make them low enough level that there wasn't too many options on their character sheet, but I definitely didn't want to go with level 1 where they were going to die too easily. So they're level 2.
That's cool.
Only a handful of characters are actually going to have access to subclass choice.
Sure. This is on the topic of fire, but I think it's worth talking about, and a little teaser for Nerdarchy content. So I was part of that press briefing from Wizards of the Coast today, which was 3 hours long, by the way, super long. But they talked about all the upcoming products, like the Curriculum of Chaos, Strixhaven a lot, and Wild Beyond the Witchlight, and then the third one, which I know what it is, but I cannot say because it is embargoed till Friday morning. So if anybody's curious about all the stuff planned for D&D Live this year, and the 3 books that are coming out towards the end of the year, check out Nerdarchy this Friday because I'll have our coverage of that. But yeah, it was pretty cool. I think the 3rd mystery book will be quite exciting to a lot of people.
Yeah, I know. I apologize that we can't mention anything further. But yeah, that's definitely a pretty awesome thing to hear about. I have some speculations as to, what kind of things are in that. So yeah, look on Friday morning. Hopefully you guys are, friends and fans that you actually like all the cool stuff that we do over on the website as well. There's plenty of content that we've, put there over the last 7 years.
Yeah. Almost as much as videos. Um, I'm not, this isn't a spoiler or anything, but I will say that Strixhaven sounds a hell of a lot cooler than I thought it would.
Mhm.
But then again, so over on the site, speaking of that, we've been like really dissecting the settings books lately because we did the Van Richten's one and we just had a lot of fun doing them. And I really like those books. And I started like looking at all the other ones that we really didn't cover a whole lot, and I was like, these are pretty awesome. I think those are some of my favorite books. So we've been doing the Acquisitions Inc. one recently, but
Well, I'll
really
say,
hitting the sweet spot to me with these setting books, I think.
I know it's not fire, but I will definitely throw out that article that you were talking about with me earlier about
Oh, thanks.
the Rust Monster Wrangler culture. Talking about padded armor. What kind of culture would use it? By the time I got to the end of that, like the amount of inspiration that came to me, like there is a culture
Right?
that I would love to, kind of, put into my world, even if it's
Yeah. That's what I found too. I didn't have that planned. I was just a lot of times when I write things, I have like an idea. I'm like, oh, let's just see where it goes.
And those kinds of things are, I think, the most thought invoking.
Yeah, and that again was right out of Game of Thrones because I thought like, well, all the different like kingdoms, they all wore distinctive armor, right? It's like the Tullys they had the salmon on their sigil,
Mhm.
and they were river folk, and they wore scale mail, and like
Right.
like the Ironborn were like rusty breastplates and stuff that were like all salt and sea crusted. So I thought like, well, I wonder if there's anything for me to discern from that. Um, and it was really cool that Rust Monster thing came about because so I was like, okay, if a culture's warriors wear padded armor, it costs 5 gold. And that's probably, that's the best they can afford. So I was like, well, I'm just gonna look at all the weapons that cost less than that. That's probably what they would use. And they were all wood things, clubs,
Mhm.
great clubs, quarterstaff, a sling and stuff. And I was like, okay, so that's and I thought like, well, maybe they wrangle rust monsters who have bad perception, so the stealth disadvantage wouldn't be that big a deal. And to delve into rust monster lore a little bit, they just don't even care if you don't have ferrous metal. Like, so you don't even need to sneak around.
Right.
Like, they don't want to hurt you; they just want the metal. So it's like, yeah, and maybe that's otherwise it's like, sure, they scrape out a meager living in their kingdom, being rust monster ranchers.
So to like I said, really really interesting topic. I urge all of you to go check it out. Hopefully you'll be as inspired as I was. Like I said, I'm very interested to like, okay, well, what kind of society would wrangle rust monsters? What kind of society would have an interest in buying them? Like
Yeah,
there people that would take it and let it loose upon their enemies, destroying armor and weapons before they rush into combat? Is there some way to kind of look at this, like, do you set them in like traps with holes in the ground so like their tendrils can kind of like snake up while the army is rushing through, and they feast as the army rushes across the battlefield?
hey, there's iron and blood too. I guess that's not ferrous though, or is it? I don't know. Is
No,
iron?
I don't think the iron in our blood is ferrous.
Uh,
uh,
um, but yeah, it really got me thinking. I really was fascinated by thinking like, even from like a mechanical standpoint, yes, it's the worst armor, and why would you wear it and stuff. But if that was, I found another like entry point for role playing. It's like, well, if that was what you had, what would you do? And it's like
right.
you'd probably have like those were your weapons, and you'd probably use cover a lot because you didn't have that great of stuff, you know. So it was really fun, and just thinking of like, well, what kind of like feats would be good for that. No, I didn't really break it down too much of like this, builds and stuff. But it's like, just a few handful of things like some feats and to think about skills that would be good. It was a lot of fun.
So with our last five, why don't we end with, kind of getting back into,
Sure.
The fire.
Sure.
There was, I think somebody briefly mentioned, dragons, but dragons are a big deal, and when we look at, Game of Thrones, we see, how much damage the, dragon breath has got the capability of doing, but iconically, dragons are linked to fire above everything else. Look at the movie Reign of Fire.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, even like outside of D&D, right?
Even outside of D&D, dragons are linked to fire. Reign of Fire is all about.
Oh, that's a cool movie.
These thoughtless creatures that eat the ash, and the substance of regrowth for the land is what these things subsist on. So like they need something to burn, because that's what they eat. And that's changed the whole culture of dragons. And like part of me looks at that and says, while they might look like dragons, they don't match the dragons that we have in our, D&D lore.
Right.
What's to say that you couldn't make them and have them be, a type of drake?
Yeah.
They are these draconic looking creatures, but they don't have the intelligence and the cunning. They are mere beasts.
Yeah, just like a flame drake or something like that.
Yeah,
yeah, totally. And I mean, again, those are cool ways for like a DM to sort of like make the world seem big and real, right? Like to a pet, like commoners probably wouldn't know a drake from a dragon or whatever. It's like it's a big lizard that breathes fire, so they're probably just going to call it a dragon, right? So it could be scary, and then maybe and again, that sends back to that trust issue with your group. It's like, well, at some, there's got to be some thought of like, okay, we're second level. We're probably not going to go up against like an ancient red dragon. But like, a flame drake the size of a horse would still be scary as hell to a village of commoners, right? If it just flies over and burns their houses down and stuff, So
it can be, utterly devastating.
Mm-hmm.
And like I said, there's no difference visually to the uneducated. So when you look at these moments where, all right, you've got this fire-breathing lizard with wings, sure, call it what you want. It's deadly to me. I'm gonna run.
And by that same token, we're talking about like these huge creatures and everything that are visually terrifying. Imagine, like just a single high-level mage that like, approaches a city and casts meteor swarm or something. It's like, it's like, sure, your 20th level characters might survive that, but I mean, imagine like a city just like literally meteors that just like Thanos style pull down from the sky, and it's like that's scary as hell.
Yeah, whatever it hits is gone. Like
yeah, right.
Like the area, it's going to just be a crater. That's how that works. There isn't.
But and to that same point, even against high level characters, I mean, yeah, that might be. I don't know if I would stretch the bounds of the spell itself by doing this, but maybe if you want to spice things up, like those kind of effects, they do leave craters, and then all of a sudden there's like difficult terrain in the way and things like that, and all those little things, like just that's what ties the mechanics and the story together for me. Is like those little things that you just have to react to, whether it's in a combat or not.
Yeah, I definitely have to look beyond what a spell says. If I'm drawing a meteor out of the sky and dropping it on the ground, and it's going to hit a building and people and is going to cause damage to what it hits, there's going to be rubble. There's going to be meters. It's going to be a rocky terrain. It's difficult no matter what.
Nerdarchy gives you permission to not have to do all the calculations for the siege damage. You can just have the building get destroyed. DMs, you're welcome.
And to be fair, like it's far easier. Like if you have things prepped, like honestly. Again, this is off topic, but like for the game that I'm running Wednesday night, because I'm dealing with players who might not know aspects of the game, beyond picking up what do I add, where do I go? Um, I want them to be able to say, okay, question. So anything that I can roll in advance, I want to be able to do so. So like I'm gonna come in with all of the different, monster groups initiative scores figured out. I'm gonna have things already generated so that I am ready to go and be able to assist the players as much as I can because I want them to have fun. I'm giving them low monster or low hit point monsters so they can get the satisfaction of kills easily. Oh my God, there's more of them than there are us. What are we gonna do? Well, let's kill them and fun with it. So like that's my fun.
I think anybody will be like, let's befriend them.
I don't think that's
a bunch of teenage boys.
So it's 9 o'clock. We've let this topic burn its way out. So any final thoughts?
I think we burned the candle at both ends. Yeah, no, it was it was almost like so broad that it was hard to, well, like flame, it was hard to hold on to and capture. So I guess it was thematic in that way. I'm happy with it.
So we're gonna be back tomorrow night with some Ingest Quest. Dave will be back tomorrow with his usual live chat.
Oh, he's got Brian Collins, so definitely come back and check that out. You'll be excited.
Awesome. So talking about Vast Grimm?
Yeah.
Nice.
It launches tomorrow. So yeah, keep an eye out. We'll have the link on the website too.
All right. So you know what that means. Until next time, stay nerdy.
Stay nerdy.